This is the final Sunday in Lent. It's Palm Sunday. So it might be the final Sunday, but it's also the first day of Holy Week, which is the busiest, most significant week of our Christian year. And this week we move from John, which we've been going through for the past little while, and we're now back into Matthew as we look at Holy Week. Now, before we even get started, I want to kind of call out something that people kind of get stumped on and kind of laugh about, and it detracts from the importance of the story because people are trying to figure out where this even comes from. You'll notice in Matthew, there's a reference to Jesus riding a colt and a donkey. And there are cartoons out there of Jesus riding these two animals side by side. So people have a good laugh about it. But that actually reference comes from, I think it's Zechariah 9:9. It's a poetic, repetitive process in the Hebrew text that talks about the significance because a donkey, a colt, these are lowly animals. Their whole idea is to emphasize how humble, how human, how approachable the person is riding them. In this instance, it's talking about Jesus in Matthew. Um, and Matthew, being the rabbi of the Christian scriptures, is trying to he's trying to honor the Hebrew scriptures. So that's why we have the donkey and the colt. So it's not that a scribe got lazy. It's not that someone got weird and couldn't tell the difference. It's that it's intentionally picking up the poetic rhythm of the Hebrew scriptures, which anybody who was Hebrew in the day that the Gospel of Matthew was first written and read would have picked up on immediately. They would have understood this is a cadence thing, this is not a mistake. So let's just get that out of the way right away. So here we are, Palm Sunday. Jesus has traveled all the way down. He's ministered, he's done his thing in various places, and now he's finally arrived to come into Jerusalem as the triumphant. He's coming in a political world that is very suspicious of him. People are hoping this is the grand warlord who's going to come in and finally get rid of the Romans and get him gone, because that was what a lot of people believed the Messiah was to be. And there's certain elements of that remaining within the Jewish tradition because they never accepted Jesus as Messiah. A great guy, a prophet, someone who definitely listened to, but they do not accept Jesus as God, which is fine. Um, but the whole idea of Messiah, the whole idea of the warlord coming in and taking on the Romans, would have been an image of being on a high horse because that was what the military rode. This long stream of warriors coming with him, coming in triumphantly with music and jewels and robes and just everything you can possibly imagine. Jesus comes in like that, but everything's turned on its head. And see, this is one of the things that we have to remember when we're looking at the gospel. It is the complete inverse of what people are expecting. They're expecting a Messiah to be a warlord, and he's not. He's just a gentle man showing people how to take care of each other. And as we'll see by the end of Holy Week, that still didn't track for the leaders of the temple. They had additional issues, which we'll get into as the week progresses. But it just they could not. If the people were having a hard time kind of merging these two ideas, then the leadership had even harder time because they not only had to try to understand this, but they also had positions to represent. So they were in a bit of a different place. But here we have we've had the story now of Jesus being recognized by his own as the Messiah. We have him now coming into Jerusalem in this huge triumphant parade, and instead of wearing rich clothes, he's got clothes thrown on the ground in front of him, which is what they would have done for a great leader coming in. Instead of armies and phalanx, he's got children running beside him, waving palm branches. Instead of trumpets and loud music, he's got people yelling, Hosanna, save us. And instead of riding the horse, he's on a donkey. We have to shift our understanding of Jesus because even today, we get caught up in the whole kingship ideology and an identity. There's hardly a hymn that you can find that talks about Jesus as a humble person. You've got to really work for it. And if you they are, they're more or less modern written. There's hardly any artwork that shows Jesus being full human, full of his humanity, allowed to do what he wants to do. The closest we'll come is with the story of Lazarus that we looked at a couple of weeks ago, is Jesus crying. We even sanitize Jesus being angry at the temple. We are not prepared, any more prepared than they were 2,000 years ago for what Jesus brought in with him. Because he wanted to teach folks. He came with a different message. See, the thing is that power, we understand that. Military might, oh my heavens, you cannot live in the world without understanding how people in charge love to flex their military might. That's all completely understandable. We write books about it, music about it, have movies about it. Everything is reminding us that might comes at the end of guns and power and forcing others. And we've got national leaders, international leaders who reinforce that day after day after day. They are not at all the leaders that they promise to be during elections. They get into power and something happens. And here we have Jesus, the ultimate power, God incarnate, living among us, doing what God does. Only it's not at all what people are expecting. It's a complete undermining of it. There's no power here. There's no wanting the best of the best here. There's no privileging those with money here at all. It's a totally different way of living. It's a way of living that is so completely unnerving to those who are in the power class and the parasite class that they will do their very best and succeed to a certain extent to reduce Jesus to nothing. That's still happening today. It might not be crucifixion, but we still have a world where we cannot hear what Jesus is saying. Jesus came in symbolically and honestly to our lives as much as to the lives of those in Jerusalem all those many centuries ago. Jesus is not going to come in and be the warlord. Anybody who associates Jesus with destruction and might and power obviously has not read the gospel very well, because that is the opposite of what he does. And we as Christians, we have this fantastic metaphor here of Palm Sunday, seeing where we fit in the story. And I mean, many of us, quite frankly, are also those children waving branches. We're so grateful that he has come. But as children, we don't get the whole picture. As adults who are hoping that this is going to be the big political sweep, this hero is going to come in and save us, and they're so disappointed and disillusioned by the end of the week because they set up the dynamic. Jesus didn't, God didn't, humans did. And when Jesus doesn't fulfill, there's attitude there. So let's look a little closer at the Palm Sunday story. Jesus gives us what we need to know here. He comes in quietly. He comes in humbly. He doesn't come in with a large parade. The parade meets him and then comes with him, but that's not how he's walking. He's coming in riding a donkey, which is slightly more elevated than the walking that he and his friends had been doing. But he comes in on the most humble of riding animals with just his friends around him. How do we find Jesus? In humble places. We're not exactly trained to do that as a faith. We're trained to treat Jesus as something special, something set aside. We read everything about Jesus through the resurrection as this why didn't you even realize what was among you at the time kind of attitude. And that's just not fair to the first centuries that were just hearing from him and following him. There is something really beautiful about being that quiet presence, the one who comes in and kind of upsets the apple cart, doesn't do what's expected to be done, but does something so much more important. Jesus made space for the most vulnerable. There's a reason we have children in the picture of Palm Sunday. We do not have children in very many places in the Bible, and when we do, they're often the plot point. But Jesus took those children and had a relationship with them, talking with them, celebrating them, accepting their praise when they were offering it. We can be those people as well. Children didn't have the grand expectations. We should not have them either. When Jesus teaches us through the act of Palm Sunday, is everything is not as we assume it's going to be. And even though it eventually gets darker and darker, it does at the end turn light again. This celebration is fantastic because it is the high that we need before we go into the low of this week. Now, often today, what people are doing is they're having what's called Passion Sunday. That was something the church kind of brought in relatively recently, as in like last number of decades, because people were not attending um, Palms or Good Friday services. Throughout this week on Barefoot Evangelist, we're going to have services every single day as we gradually go through the week, and it gets harder and darker and more poignant until we do get to Good Friday. So I invite you to join me through all of those, because Easter is not as wonderful and celebratory if we go from Palm Sunday to Easter. There's no reason to feel darkness if you go from celebration to celebration. And Easter only matters when it is a complete reversal of the darkness we think we are stuck in on Good Friday. So join me, please, on Barefoot Evangelist as we go through Holy Week and we look at the various people involved and how they react, how they behave, how they respond to what is a politically charged situation, which ultimately shows us where our fault lines are and where we have to kind of let go and let God, as much as I hate slogans. This is Palm Sunday. Share those branches, wave them high. This is the day that we can celebrate the coming of Jesus with all of the wonder and triumph and completely inverting of the power structure. This is the gospel lived in action, full of metaphor, full of wonder, and full of celebration. So Hosanna today. We'll get to tomorrow. But today it's all about Hosanna.